The reality is that it is one of the most important products Nikken has come out with, and a lot of that has to do with the lifestyle we have today. And what are the issues going on in America that are so prevalent with everybody around health? And actually, if you, later today, by the time I'm done, I hope you realize that it is one of the keystone things that you could do for any chronic disease that's going on in this country. Anything that you can think of that you think of as a symptom of aging or disease can actually be helped by this one particular product. And I'm going to teach you today why that is. And I want to remind you, though, up front, it's not for any of those things. But it allows your body, if you utilize it right, to go into a state where it corrects itself. And this is the whole thing you have to realize about any health product. It's not some super thing that goes in and is meant for one particular disease or heals anything. Your body has the ability to regulate itself and heal itself from just about anything if you feed it the right thing. And this being a protein food, and a very healthy one with different nutrients and green foods and herbs in it that assist the body in a lot of different levels. But the main thing is it's a whole food protein, and if you utilize that right, you can make an impact on anything. And I can tell you, in America today, because I get questions about health all the time, the biggest category of questions are all centered around one particular idea. And they don't realize that almost all your health questions all center around the same thing. And it comes down to the issue of sugar and how it affects your life. And the reality is, people are talking to me all the time. What do they want to know about? How to diet, how to curb their cravings for sugar, and they're always asking me about diabetes. All those issues are one single thing. In fact, almost all high blood pressure, heart disease, obesity, all those three added on to the other are all about the same thing. It's all about sugar and how it messes up your system. And you know, people don't connect the dots on that and see how it's all interrelated. And I know it's affecting a lot of people in this room. There's a lot of people here that love to lose weight. They love to get their cravings for sugar taken care of. And it's not that hard. It's only hard because you've never been taught how to actually make an impact in it and change the way you think about those foods, and it can take as little as 7 days. So today, and in the beginning here, I'm going to tell you about how to actually work this into your diet so that after 7 days, you could be without sugar cravings anymore. You know how much of an impact that would make on your diet? Within a couple of weeks, you can actually start to control your blood sugar if you're moving toward a pre-diabetic state. And within a month, you could easily lose 10 pounds. It's not that hard without really dieting that much. It's just how much effort you want to put into the first 7 days, the next week. And it all depends on if you have the extreme end case, which is diabetes type 2, as to whether or not you become really strict with the diet I'm going to lay out. But most people miss the most essential thing about dieting, and that is you have to stop your cravings for sugar. And the reason that your body has cravings for sugar is because your brain's been taught to crave it, and it's actually missing something else. So once you give your brain what it actually wants, you'll be surprised. It takes about 7 days and you'll no longer crave sugar. And then it's not that hard to pass up desserts or to not eat so much bread or all these other things that throw your diet into chaos, because your brain has got what it needed for a week or so, and now you have a whole different outlook on food. And you have a whole different approach to what you do for the entire day, and you have more energy. Because you know, if you're complaining about a lack of energy, it's often the same root cause is cravings for sugar, and how your brain didn't get what it wanted to start your day out, and so it's set up for failure. So what you're going to learn today is how to set your brain up for success. And it all centers around how to use the vital balance to do that. Now, Dave Balzer did an excellent call on the Vital Balance the other night, and he gave out a simple program as to how to use it as a meal replacement. And that was great for people that are just looking to replace a meal, maybe lose a few pounds. But if you really want to key into how to curb your cravings for sugar, this is how you do it. When you wake up in the morning and have breakfast, and it doesn't matter if you're one of those people that doesn't like to eat for the first 3 hours you're up, right? Still, your first meal is your breakfast. It doesn't matter what time of day it is, right? So it'll work for anybody. It doesn't matter what time you actually start with a meal. But the reality is your brain is craving protein in the morning. And if you end up giving it toast and sugar in your coffee or juice, you're actually setting your brain up to just crave sugar all day long. It doesn't matter if after that first meal of carbohydrates, you eat 300 grams of protein the rest of the day. It's still set up for failure because you didn't give it what it wanted to start the day. So if you wake up and just have a pure protein food, right? And what your body does is it separates out an amino acid called tyrosine. Goes straight up into your brain and it turns on a neurotransmitter called dopamine. And dopamine is a neurotransmitter that allows you to feel pleasure, to be excited about what you're doing, to be creative, but it also controls your cravings for sweets. And so once you give your body that protein first thing in the morning, you start to actually boot up your brain. It's almost like turning your computer on in the morning because dopamine boots your brain up. It's the power by which your brain actually works. You've heard everybody say, I don't have the willpower to diet. All they're really saying is, I don't have any dopamine turned on in my brain, and so I don't have the willpower to stay away from sugar. That's all they're really saying, but they don't realize that because they've never been taught what the brain actually requires for food. So once you wake up and have a pure protein, and this is why the Vital Balance is so good for this, because that's what it is. It's a whole food, protein food that you can just take first thing in the morning. You have that either with water, if you're really serious, with water for the first week or so, or you can use some unsweetened almond milk, something that didn't have sugar added to it, and you just have that by itself. Within about a half an hour, you're going to notice that your brain is totally awake because it got what it wanted. And it doesn't matter after that if it's an hour or 2 hours later and you become hungry. What you're going to notice is that it's not the same hunger that you used to get when you ate carbohydrates. It's the type of hunger where you realize I'm getting a little hungry and I might need to eat, but I'm not looking under the desk for the cookies I lost or somewhere behind the coffee cups where you stashed the candy bar that's going to get you till 10 o'clock, right? It's the type of hunger where you just realize that you need to eat some other food. And it doesn't matter if it's even just 2 hours later that you sit down and have some more food. But if you're serious about training your brain, the next meal you will eat will just be vegetables and another piece of protein. It could be another shake. It could be your favorite chicken breast, whatever it is. But for that first week, just make sure your carbs come from vegetables and try and stay away from simple grains like breads and white pastas and these types of things. And look at the fact that if you do that now, and your next meal will be the same, if you do that for 1 week, I can guarantee you, you will not be craving sugar. And then it'll be easy for you to make decisions about what you're going to get at the restaurant, what you're going to have for your next meal, because you've actually given your brain what it wants, and it starts to work for you. And then dieting becomes a very easy thing to do. I've been on a health kick myself for over 32 years. I'm 58, or I will be 58 next week. And the biggest improvement in that 30 years of my health was when I realized the connection to protein and feeding my brain. I was eating a diet for a long time as a vegetarian that was high on protein of combining foods and using drinks and all this stuff, but I never really got down to breakfast, the first start of things, and I was addicted to sugar. It didn't matter that my sugar came from really great fruit sources and I was eating all whole grain baked goods and all these different things. I had a very pristine organic diet, but I was still addicted to sugar. I got weak every time I ate baked things. All these different things were happening to me. And then when I made the connection of feeding my brain in the morning, it all disappeared. Right now, I don't have any cravings for sugar. I don't really care if I eat dessert ever. I don't miss it at all because I taste other foods so much better now because I've lost that craving for one particular taste, and I feel good almost all the time. And it all has to do with the fact that every day I start my day out with a protein and a protein by itself, and then I move into other food throughout the day. One of the things that you don't realize, and you know, in this country we have just gone crazy about telling people how bad fat is for them, and the reality is it's all wrong. It's all just marketing, and you have been fed such nonsense about food. It's unbelievable. And the reality is you look at just the amount of and the type of fat that they put in the Vital Balance, you could have fats basically almost making up as much as 50% of your diet if you didn't eat sugar, and it would hardly have any negative effect in your system. And you know why that is? Because when you consume sugar all day long, your body cannot process fat. The reason MCTs are so good for your brain is because your brain has lost the ability to metabolize sugar. It's almost in a pre-diabetic state, and it can no longer metabolize it for energy, and it uses the ketones from MCTs to actually have fuel and to wake up your brain. But the reality is, genetically, you are programmed to burn fat because a million years ago, you didn't have access to 7-Elevens, big gulps, and all these other things that ruined your metabolism. You were lucky to get a tablespoon or two of sugar every few months in your system. But now, and basically what did you run on? You ran on protein and fats, especially in the wintertime. So now, because you continuously have elevated blood sugar all day long, your body cannot utilize any of the fat in your diet because it has to clear the sugar out first. Everybody makes this mistake of thinking that insulin is there to help you burn carbohydrates for energy. It's not. It's actually there to turn sugar into fat, to make you fatter so you survive the winter. But you've changed it into something that has to work all day long, every single day, to clear out sugar, and so you don't burn fat for energy anymore. And that can change in as little as 2 weeks. You can actually become a lean, mean, fat-burning machine in as little as 2 weeks' time. You know, I always get this thing, people laugh at me because they always say they sent the skinny guy out to talk about dieting again, right? But I was obese when I was 20 years of age. When I hit the Christmas of my 20th year, I weighed 257 pounds, right? So I decided on Christmas Day of that year that I was going to lose weight starting January 1st, and you know what I did? I gained 10 pounds by January 1st. Because I knew I was actually going to do it, because my friends were making jokes about going into hibernation and all these different things, and I knew I had put on 30 pounds in the last 2 months because I was just really into Johnny Carson bologna sandwiches and mayonnaise at that time, right? So I decided to go on a diet, and I went up to 267 pounds by the morning of January 1st. And by, I think it was around July 1st, I weighed 145 pounds. And I lost another 3 pounds after that, until I realized one day that I was so thin that I gained back another 20 pounds in the next year. And that's right about where I am now. And you know what? Now, and I have maintained this weight within 5 or 6 pounds for the last 32 years. And you know what? It's actually almost impossible for me to gain weight because I changed my diet of having protein in the morning, and I don't eat a lot of grains like breads and things like that. A few years ago, I quit eating gluten because I'm slightly allergic to it, and because I don't have that easy instant food around and I eat all whole foods, I can literally overeat for weeks at a time and maybe gain a half a pound or a pound. Imagine that. Can you imagine just eating everything that you would ever want to eat and not gaining weight? It's not that hard to do. But because of your addiction to sugar, that means your addiction to white breads and all these different things that just instantly turn into sugar are dominating your diet and dominating your life. But by changing your brain around, simply just getting into a position to where you give it what it wants first thing in the morning, you can actually say goodbye to that in a period of 7 days, maybe for some of you 2 weeks. And even if you have type 2 diabetes, because I know this can happen because I've done it with dozens of people, that within a month of following that same plan, you can basically regulate your own blood sugar just by giving your brain what it wants and allowing it to regulate itself. All these things fall by the wayside. You don't think you have willpower? It's only because your brain's not getting what it wants, and you have lost control because you've lost control of your diet. And you think it's hard? It's not hard for me to look at anything type of food that I know is not healthy for me because I'm not in a craving state all the time. And it changes. A lot of people will think this, they don't believe this could actually happen because they have such cravings for desserts they can't walk by a donut shop and not just buckle their knees, right? But the reality is it's only because the first thing you eat in the morning is a carbo or a sugar, and you get on a false high of a dopamine thing, and your brain starts to fail within an hour or two, and you have another craving, and then you're on a treadmill. And I'll tell you something else. This also ties into this huge rage of antidepressants in America. All has to do with what you set your brain up with first thing in the morning. You'd be surprised how many different things that you can avoid just by training your brain or giving what it actually needs in the morning. And it's all dependent on doing something like a pure protein. And this is why this vital balance is so important for everybody, because it's an easy way to get on a program to teach yourself how powerful a food can actually be. You don't have to prepare anything. You don't have to plan out a menu for the first meal in the morning. You just do it. It's over with. And within a week, you're going to learn a huge lesson, that your body runs a certain way and reacts a certain way to types of foods, and that almost all your moods, all your initiative in life, your willpower is all wrapped around one tiny thing, and that is what you start your day out with every single day. And so anybody in this room can actually do it. Even if you're skeptical about how it's going to happen, believe me, you won't be in 7 days. And you know what else I love about this shake was that 2 months ago, I'd stand up and I'd meet people after meetings, and they'd say I have sugar cravings, and I'd have to tell them, well, just eat a chicken breast for breakfast, right? Well, not that many people wanted to do that, right? But every single one that did lost their cravings for sugar within 7 days. You know, and I tell people, if that's all you want to do is just curb your cravings for sugar, it only takes you 7 days, and after that, you could have your shake for lunch. You could have it at any time of the day you want and have a different type of protein. You can have eggs. You can have whatever you like at that, but just curb the bread a little bit, and it'll do the same thing. But you need that 1 week, and for some people too, to just give it a pure protein to set it up for success. And after that, you can be a little less stringent with it. And it's as simple as that to change the way you feel about almost everything. You'd be surprised how even your business will change because your brain has changed and your approach to doing the little things you need to do has changed because you have more willpower, you have more focus, and all these things are really just a symptom of a brain that's turned on in certain parts and actually engages you in a different way of looking at life. You know, Colleen mentioned stress, and you mentioned stress when you talked and how to control it. You know, one of the best ways of controlling stress is the same thing I just talked about with sugar cravings. Because it's the part of your brain that's ruled by reasoning and creative thought and willpower that actually determines how you see a stressful situation. And when that part of your brain is turned on, it's less likely that you're going to have the part of your brain on that just is what they call the reptilian brain. It's been there for millions of years. You'll be able to control that part that just wants to turn on and throw you into a full-on stress response because you have a different, more booted up brain, more energy in your brain, and you have the ability to see what's actually going on in your stressors and not overreact to everything that's going on in your life. And it's a simple thing of just following this strategy of feeding yourself a protein breakfast. Now, when you look at sugar craving, if that's your only concern with it, you can do that within 7 days. Now, if you're someone who wants to lose weight, or you're pre-diabetic, or even have type 2 diabetes, you can completely control that blood sugar within 30 days. You just follow the same program. Try to eat a high-protein breakfast, have a shake, have a high-protein meal at lunch with some vegetables. Eat all the vegetables you want. You don't have to count calories all the time. It's boring. I have never counted calories in my entire life, and I lost 125 pounds at one time. Never counted calories at all. I just ate different types of food. You know, I was in Europe. I just had the greatest experience. And anybody here that likes food will love this experience. And I'm sure you all would love to have this experience. I went to the Nikken European Convention in Cyprus on January 13th. I actually got to the resort on the 14th, and I was there until the Saturday of the 19th. And in that resort, they had an entire restaurant set up just for Nikken. No one was allowed in it. It opened every day, 3 hours for breakfast, 2 hours for lunch, and 3 hours for dinner, right? Almost everybody I talked to by the time Thursday night and Friday morning rolled around, they were all saying, I don't know if I can eat anymore, right? The food was so good, and they had everything in that room. It was just a huge banquet of food. And I ended up eating more food than I have ever eaten in my life, even when I was obese, right? I ate at least 2 full plates of food a day. I ate over a half pound to 3/4 of a pound of cheese every single day. They had this amazing local feta cheese and something called halloumi and all these other things. And I love goat cheese, and I love finding, ethnic foods from around the world. And I was eating it every single meal. For breakfast, I would have a 3-egg omelet, probably a 1/4 pound of cheese, different slices of it. I'd have bowls of yogurt. I'd go get another plate of vegetables. I was just eating all the time, right? And by the time Friday night rolled around, I was telling my wife, I don't think I've ever eaten this much food. I gained 1 pound. 1 pound. There was people at my table going, wow, look at him. Look how much bigger he is, right? They're pointing all this out. And you could easily tell people that you had talked to 3 or 4 times, they had changed in 3 days. They were eating so much food, right? But the reality is, I don't eat wheat, so I wasn't at the big bread table. And I don't eat gluten, so I didn't have access to desserts. Although on the 3rd day, I did discover the gelato table that I didn't know was there the first 2 days, right? And I love gelato, so I had that 3 or 4 times. And I did find a chocolate mousse that was hidden in the back and some other things, and I ate that a few times. So I wasn't avoiding anything, hardly gained any weight at all, and I lost that within a day or 2 of being home. You know, it's amazing because I was eating vegetables, proteins, all kinds of foods and hummuses and high-fat things, had tons of energy all day, never gained any weight. Because it's the simple things that get in your way of eating too many breads, too many desserts that are all sugar, that then ruins your body's ability to burn the fat in the food that you're eating, and you don't use it for energy. It ends up staying in your bloodstream or getting stored as fat, and you end up getting huge because you made a poor food choice. And believe me, there is so much more exciting food in the world than white bread. I can honestly tell you there is so much exciting food in the world to eat that we all limit ourselves because of that same old thing. We're addicted to sugar, or we have sugar cravings. We limit our choices on everything. And then we become locked in to this narrow focus of eating food that's always the same, and we don't vary anything. And believe me, there is such a great variance of food out in the world that you could have access to that you haven't even begun to tap in or scratch the surface of all the exciting food that's out there. That's all healthy for you. And it all makes a difference in your health because of the way it's produced and how it affects your blood sugar. You know, today, this whole seminar has been set up to be about heart health, and I'm going to touch on that a lot. But a lot of you probably don't realize that I have just given you one of the greatest pieces of advice for your heart, and that is about regulating sugar. And you don't realize how much of an impact that makes in your health around the issues of heart. And I'm going to cover that today too, because recent research that comes out shows that when you have a meal that is including way too many simple carbs and too many sugars because you have cravings for all these things, you didn't start your day out right, and your blood sugar raises 40 to 50 points over resting, you have now moved into a state to where you've doubled your chance of having a heart attack or a stroke for about 3 hours until your body clears it out. Think about that. It happens every single day with every single meal. That you raise your blood sugar too much because of your brain is trying to get you to have more of what it wants. Your blood sugar goes up and you're in that zone for about 3 hours. And you know what? When you think about maybe your own diet or some people you know or your friends and what they eat every single day, what you realize is that almost everybody you know spends about 9 hours a day in a state of having twice as much of a chance of having a heart attack or a stroke. This is why heart disease is the #1 killer in America. You're not going to get away from that by taking statin drugs, which is the big multivitamin type drug they give everybody for lowering cholesterol. Because once you raise your blood sugar that much, all the inflammation goes way up in your arteries. Then you have all these chemical reactions going on in your body that are all due to that sugar. And it goes on for hours and days, and it just keeps going on and perpetuating itself continuously. And this is why we have so much heart disease and why statin drugs have never made an impact on anything. You know, the big mistake that almost everyone makes when they go to a doctor and they get a drug for cholesterol is they think, wow, my numbers dropped 40 points. I'm healthy now, right? Their health has literally not changed at all. Their numbers have changed. Do you know that half the people that have a heart attack have low cholesterol? Around 150. Well, if lowering your cholesterol was that important, why do half the people that have heart attacks have cholesterol of 150? It's because once your body actually produces cholesterol as a protective mechanism against inflammation and other things going on in your body. It's a reaction to all the inflammation from the sugar and insulin that's continuously circulating around your body. You have to have cholesterol to repair cellular damage, which is what happens when you have inflammation. So your body just keeps making more of it. So what happens if you get rid of the cholesterol? There's nothing there to fix the cellular membranes from all the inflammation. The inflammation's still there, you're just not making any chemicals on your own to actually deal with it. The reason you end up having a cholesterol issue and your arteries become plugged after 20 years or 30 years of going through this is because it no longer can keep up trying to repair it with cholesterol and it starts to break down. And so just lowering it with a drug does nothing for you. If you think about the fact that 20 years ago, when statin drugs became the rage in America and we started consuming $15 to $20 billion a year of them, heart disease was the #2 killer in America. And now after 20 years of consuming that, which is between $300 and $400 billion, it's now the #1 killer in America. So what was the point of that? Really, think about it. You could almost get as much benefit from just eating a salad every day and changing something else out of your diet. It's, you know, to me, if medicine is based on science, why wouldn't anybody look at that and wonder what's going on? If it's actually based on statistics, which is what science is really about, statistics and showing a cause and effect, why doesn't anybody read that? Why doesn't anybody react to that? The reality is you have to give statin drugs to 100 people to have one person have a benefit. Does that really seem like anything that anybody would want to do? And so the reality is you change your diet, you change the amount of sugar in it by starting out your day with a protein food and changing the way you crave sugar, and you're going to make an impact on every chronic illness in this country just by changing the type of food that you eat and making an impact. Sugar is one of the main causes of high blood pressure, that and a lack of water. Sugar is one of the main causes of, or one of the things that adds to inflammation in your brain, which could lead to all the things that we're frightened of now, Alzheimer's and dementia. It leads as the main reason for obesity. It's just sugar intake. Yet, you try and tell an obese person to just cut their calories, and it's impossible for them to do because they crave sugar all the time, and there's no way that brain in that state can just cut calories and have any success. But if you gave them protein in the morning, and they actually did it for a couple of weeks, their whole system changes. They no longer have the same cravings. They don't eat the same foods. Someone that's been addicted to sugar for that long, the frontal part of their brain, which rules willpower and creativity and decision making, hardly even works. How are you going to get that person to lose weight or to change their diet or to get off sugar? It just doesn't happen. And so you've been handed the key here, really, to almost everything by just changing that first meal of the day, which is breakfast, and moving away from being dependent on sugar for all of your calories and all of your basically cravings that you have every single day. And it's not that you can't eat it for the rest of your life, but have it become a treat. Have it become something that it used to be. It was dessert, right? That meant you didn't have it at every single meal. Where did this idea come that we have dessert 3 times a day, right? I can tell you at least a dozen times in my life, I've sat down to dinner with someone with diabetes, and they've taken 2 shots of insulin while they're sitting there in between their first 2 plates of food and the ice cream, right? What is that about? That's saying, I just have this. I have no control over my body, and I just have to take drugs. It's not my fault. And to a certain regard, it's not your fault because we've all been programmed by Western medicine that things just happen to us. We were just unlucky, right? Or we were born defective because we just broke down, right? It had nothing to do with anything that we do, and that's why they just hand you the pills and they send you home and say, clean up your diet a little bit. The reality is that almost all chronic illness is just a progressive downhill movement toward ill health due to the fact that you're eating the wrong foods. And not so much that you're eating too many calories, but the wrong types of foods that don't burn and aren't used for fuel. And you can all change that around and make it work quite easily. Now, along with the diet, you want to exercise a little bit, but you don't have to get out and run marathons. You don't have to do all these crazy things. You ever see these diet programs where people are they always name it after something in the military, Some military type program where you're going in and they're basically beating you to death just to exercise in the gym, pushing you to the point of collapse. You know what that actually does to your body? It causes you to have a stress response. It causes you to have weak adrenals and causes you to lose your ability to actually produce human growth hormone and to actually heal yourself at night. It's the worst exercise you could possibly do. Unless you're 20 years old in the Army, you shouldn't do any type of exercise that has a military name to it. And you really shouldn't be in boot camp, I'm too old for boot camp. I'm telling you. I don't need to do that. You don't need to do it either. You just need to walk. Walk a couple miles, spend 40 minutes walking, go to the gym and lift weights for 15 minutes. And we're not talking about Arnold Schwarzenegger type weights. We're talking about 20 pounds. And move your body and create muscle. Because your body, once it has a little more muscle, it burns more calories. It raises your metabolism. You actually sleep better. And that mild exercise causes your body to actually turn on a part of your adrenals, which causes a healing response instead of a stress response. And so these things are not that drastic that you have to do. But in the first 2 weeks of dieting, where you're avoiding sugar completely, and try not to eat very much fat for 2 weeks, because you know what's really happening in your body when you have diabetes? All your cells are full of fat. You think it's just sugar, but your body takes sugar, excessive sugar, turns it into a fat molecule, and sticks it in your cells. And so diabetes is simply the idea that your cells are full, they're done eating, and they can't eat anymore. So they ignore insulin. And so now you have sugar and a little bit of fat and insulin circulating around your body all the time. It's no different than Thanksgiving dinner, where you're sitting there and you're on your like third plate of food and you loosened up your belt and you unzipped your pants and you're looking out over the table and you realize, oh my gosh, there's another 5 meals of food sitting here, right? But you cannot eat it. You cannot stick another bite in your mouth. That's the same thing your cells are going through every single day when you consume too much sugar. And that's why you're having a problem, right? But you can put all that food in the refrigerator for tomorrow. Your body can't do anything with it. It's just circulating around in your blood, causing inflammation and chaos, and setting you up for a heart attack or a stroke. That's what's going on. So if you go 2 weeks without hardly eating any fat, except for a small amount of beneficial ones like that's in the Vital Balance shake, I mean, you do that, then after 2 weeks, and you walk a little bit, your body actually just starts throwing off fat out of your cells, and you just start burning it for energy. And now you have much more energy. Your whole system is working differently, and then you can start adding fats back into your diet, and actually, beneficial fats, things like coconut oil, nuts, raw nuts, all these types of fats, olive oil, are good for you and will be burned for energy because you've now lost all that sugar out of your system. And your system can be completely different. It doesn't take that long, and it doesn't take that drastic of a nutrition program or exercise program to actually do it. Anybody can do it. Believe me, when I weighed 267 pounds, I wasn't overweight. I was a slob, right? I couldn't mow the lawn, even a good 200 feet of grass, without drinking a Pepsi, right? That's what my life was about at that time. I lost all my weight by just stopping to drinking soda pop, and I quit eating fast food. And that was it. I dropped 125 pounds. At the same time, I didn't realize it at that time, but I also cut out all the MSG and all the chemicals I was eating because it's in all the fast food. And so my entire system and brain changed because of that lack of chemical and got rid of the sugar. It wasn't that difficult to do. When I did that, I didn't know a single thing about health. Nothing. And I was able to actually do that and keep it off. I worry now more about gaining weight. I actually have a bathroom scale at home. You know why? Because I want to make sure I haven't lost too many pounds during the week, and I have to determine how much more food I have to eat on the weekend, because I didn't eat enough during the week, right? I weigh myself when I get home from my Nikken trip every Monday morning to see how much weight I lost on the weekend, so I know I have to eat more meals during the week to make up for it. Wouldn't that be fun? Wouldn't most people like that? Right? It's so funny. I was at Thanksgiving dinner. It was July 4th with my family, my relatives. And they're all sitting there, and I have to admit that most of them were about 60 pounds overweight. And they're all eating foods that I would never touch. And when we have family get-togethers, they always ask me to bring food. And they don't know that I know this, but I know they ask me to bring it because it'll be the only way that my family will eat, because we won't eat the rest of the food, right? And so I bring food to feed myself and my family, right? So I'm sitting there, and I do this thing every time I eat with my relatives. I always make sure I eat twice as much food as normal when they're watching me, because I'm the thinnest person there, right? So I just pile my plate up like it almost, you got to balance it so the thing doesn't break in half by the time I get to the table, right? And I'm sitting there just eating, and then I go back and get more, And my aunt looks at me and she goes, "Roger, what do you do for protein?" I said, "Well, I eat eggs a lot and protein shakes." "You eat eggs?" I said, "Yeah." She goes, "Well, I can only have 1 egg a week because of my heart." I'm looking over there. It's the Diet Coke, the macaroni and cheese, the chocolate pudding, and the Jell-O dessert on the plate, right? But she can only have 1 egg because of her heart. I said, "Well, I eat eggs." She said, "Well, how many do you eat?" And I said, "Well, I really try to keep it under like 21 for the week." And they're a little slow on math, but after a few seconds they go, "Well, that's 3 a day," right? Yeah, it's 3 a day. And then I always have to throw in the story of having the eight egg yolk omelet I made one day, which was just outrageous if you ever want to try it. But they look at me, and every single one of them had a story where I can only eat one. My doctor said I can maybe have 2 once a week, right? But they're all eating stuff that all causes heart disease, yet they're scared of eggs. And what is it? They're all addicted to sugar in all its different forms, but they're afraid of eating a natural food, which is one of the most pure, basic brain foods you could ever eat. And so this is what has happened to society. We've been made afraid of natural foods, and we end up eating all this junk to make up for the fact that we're not eating whole foods that also help you with your food cravings and all these different things. And we've set society up basically for failure because we've misinformed them about foods. And if you get back to eating whole foods, you really will not have to worry about gaining weight. You don't have to worry about all these things because you've taken control of your diet. And once you take control of your diet, you take control of your life. And you start to find out that you're no longer going to be that pre-programmed person who eats according to TV and commercials and falls into these patterns of what every single other person does. And all of a sudden, you've chosen to exist in the world that you created, and your whole life changes. You know that whole idea about we create our reality? You always think that you create your own reality. You think that's a new age thing, right? But the reality is, you do create your reality every single day. You have chosen to be what you are today, whether you're a nurse, a doctor, or work in a factory, or you work on a ship, whatever you have chosen to do, you have chosen that activity and everything that goes along with it, your TV programs, every single thing you do, you've chosen to do for some reason. And a lot of times you don't think about these reasons, they just happen to you because you're not focused. And so you have created the world that you exist in. But you know what? You can create another one and create a different world and exist in that. Just by taking charge of what you do. And the basic element in all of that is taking control of your health. Because that, no matter what reason you get into health for, by taking control of that and your diet, you will start to think differently. You will start to be exposed to information that you've never been exposed to before. You'll be in crowds like this of people that are looking for answers and people that have answers. And you will be exposed to a whole different reality. And within a year or so, your life will be completely different. It can be the most vibrant, fun thing that you've ever done in your life. But you resist at the beginning. And a lot of that is due to the sugar. Because your brain is not able to make logical decisions and have the willpower to move forward and do what you actually want to do. And it can all change quite rapidly. One of the things I love about Nikken is that it doesn't just have something like the Vital Balance, but it has a program and a lifestyle that you can adapt and put into your own life and have it become something where you've now fallen into a pattern of doing things that are healthy for you, and you have the education backing up all these different things that allow you to grow as human beings. The whole humans being more idea behind Nikken, growing personally so that you can expand your whole life and change your ideas. And I asked this last night, but how many people do you know that you swear have gone to humans being less? I know most of you have, right? You run into it all the time. And it's because people become focused on one little thing and they think life can progress at this one little rate and everything's always the same, and it's not. The reality is that in this company, you're not only exposed to things that help you to grow personally, but you're exposed to the biggest or most dynamic segment of health that exists today, and that is energy medicine. Has anybody here not ever heard of energy medicine? No one has? That's good. The reality is that Nikken is you could almost say it's one of the founding companies of energy medicine in the United States, and yet nobody knows that. Energy medicine originated in this country and in Europe with magnetic energy. It's not some woo-woo science thing. It's the reality that human beings evolved over 1 million years in connection with magnetic energy. And when they're removed from it, they don't feel the same. None of their cells function the same. Their body doesn't work the same way. Because at the beginning of time, every single moment that you spent alive was spent connected to the planet Earth. You slept on it, you walked on it, every single thing you did was that connection. It's only in the last 150 years that you actually unplugged from that. And you actually we became as a species unplugged from that energy source. And throughout all that time, every cell in your body as it evolved with a certain little magnetic charge that was part of its evolution and part of the way that cell actually functions. And so when you remove it, it's no different than if you're at home now and you got your big satellite TV on and you're paying for satellite TV or cable. You know that great signal you get all the time? Well, go home tonight and just change it to rabbit ears with tinfoil wrapped around it, right? It's the same concept. You might get a picture and you might get it clear once in a while, but your signals are messed up. It's not fully coming in, and that's what a human being is when they're disconnected from the earth and magnetic energy. You're just not getting the same signal. And that makes an impact on everything. Even the water you drink was charged with magnetic energy. We rarely talk about this, but Nikken's water systems have always had a component of having magnetic energy connected to it. And you know why? Because the molecules in water react to magnetic energy the exact same way the blood cells in a human body reacts to it. And what is that? They don't clump together anymore. When you have a human being stand on the planet Earth, all their blood starts to thin out and the cells move apart from each other. They actually repel each other. It's something called zeta potential. And so the magnetic energy of each cell comes back to a state of balance and they repel each other. They no longer clump. The same thing happens with water. The molecules of water no longer clump and they move apart, and it becomes easier to absorb into your system. You know, we talk all about alkaline water, and Nikken's got great alkaline water, and it's living water with minerals and all these things, but rarely does anybody bring up the fact that the molecules are simply in a state that your cells recognize and take up, because again, the magnetic charge that is involved in all the Nikken products. The same thing happens in human blood. Your cells react differently to it. They don't clump up. Blood that's too thick or clumps too much is involved in every single phase of heart disease. There's not one single part of heart disease that doesn't involve blood that's too thick and doesn't react properly. So you can make a slight impact. Doesn't mean you'll never have heart disease because there's so many factors of diet and all these different things, but the reality is it's just that little percentage of helping your body to correct itself, to helping your body to actually be in a state of health or have an easier way to actually become as healthy as it can be depending on the environment that you put it in at every single moment. And this is the key to everything. It doesn't matter if it's magnetics or if it's water or we're talking about light. Everything is just putting your body in a position to make it easier for it to regulate itself and to be as healthy as it can be in that moment. And so these little things that, Nikken is founded on, and what is that? Clean living water, magnetic energy, sleep. There's hardly anything that is not impacted by sleep. And the fact that you are actually able to do that in the presence of magnetic energy, which allows now your body to go back into its natural state and to shed stress, because this is the main way you shed stress is sleep. If you're not sleeping in a deep sleep every night, you're not shutting off your stress response. Your body's not reorganizing. It's not releasing human growth hormone, and you're not healing. And that's what happens every night for the first hour and a half to 2 hours that you sleep. And the magnetic energy just makes it easier for your body to fall into that pattern. The great thing about all these things, because Nikken pays attention to establishing a baseline of health in people. This is why anybody in this room can make an impact on anybody's health by offering them water and sleep and magnetic energy, whether it's in their shoes, in their bed, whatever they're being exposed to, because you're allowing the body to go back into its natural phase of healing and not actually worrying about what their actual imbalance is. Because every chronic illness is a deep-rooted imbalance that's made worse by the food choices you make, the lack of sleep, dehydration. Dehydration is a huge part of heart disease. There's studies that show that if anybody in this room right now can have a 50% less chance of having a heart attack today just by drinking 4 to 6 glasses of water. Really, that was really hard, wasn't it? You don't need a prescription for that. You don't need to pay somebody $150 to go down and get somebody to write out a note to tell you to do that. But the reality is you have access to that today, and it's clean water. It's clean and it's living. It's something your body recognizes. So you can have the ability to fulfill one of the greatest human desires that exist in almost all conscious people. And you know what that is? The desire to help other human beings. You don't need to have some science degree, some medical degree. You don't need to be an herbalist. You don't need to be anything other than someone who cares and who has a heart and wants to help somebody else. And you do that through sharing your own experience of how it helped you. And there's nothing that will make you feel more alive because it is in your DNA. It's woven in there that you care and you love and you help other people. And once you tap into that and fulfill that, you feel better. Your own health improves just from the fact that you help somebody else. The reality is the greatest thing about Nikken's concept of the healthy home and the whole concept of how they started out with magnetics and water and sleep is the reality is that you can touch any single person in the world through that concept. Last night we were at dinner and I was telling Mac that I read a study that showed that 6 million people die every year in the world from air pollution. Think about that, from air pollution. And you know that the oddest thing, well, it really wasn't funny, but it's so true. They said in Eastern countries, you know, they're talking about Asia and that, it's mostly due to air pollution outside. And in Western countries, the U.S. and over here, it's all air inside the house. Right? People don't think about it. We're so exposed to so many flame retardants and chemicals and endocrine disrupting chemicals every single day in your home. And you know what? It's not that hard to deal with. You become more conscious because you're eating better. You're exposed to more ideas about health. You're more conscious and aware. You buy better products. You don't have so many chemicals in your home. And you have a simple air filtration machine in your house that actually clears things out. It's not that big of a change, or it's not that difficult to do once you become aware and start to change things in your life. And everything just is a progression and a progression and is a progression. You know, I always have people ask me, how can I get to the point where I know as much as you about health? I say, well, all you have to do is almost die 4 or 5 times and then study about health for 30 years or so and figure out to avoid the things that usually kill you, right? And then share that with other people. The reality is you don't have to learn that much on any given day about anything. But once you're involved in the health field, you'll find out that every single day you learn something a little different and a little new. And you store that information. And you're so lucky because everybody here is connected. They can get a hold of so many people in this room and ask them, what did they do for this? Would you have any experience with this? Is this going on? You have so much to draw from because you're in a room or in an organization of like-minded people that all want to move forward. They all want to progress, not only in their families and their finances, but in their health and all these different aspects, and you just have to take advantage of it. And that's one of the great things about having an opportunity to be even introduced to something like Nikken. And this is the other thing someone touched on last night, is that it's almost criminal that you don't actually tell somebody about some of the products that you're actually using. Because people just don't have access to information and they don't trust many other sources of information. There's so much garbage information out on the internet that it's really hard, even for someone like me who studies all the time and is used to reading nonsense news on the internet. I'll tell you a really funny story. I'm prescribed, I have signed up to like 8 different doctors' newsletters, right? Because I want to know what MDs in the natural field are doing and what they're all talking about and all these things. So I get all this stuff, right? But all of them sell products, right? Well, one day, about a year ago, I got an email from all 8 of them that said the exact same thing. It was the exact same subject matter from all 8 of them, and it came in at the exact same time, and they were all lined up right together in my email stack, right? Because they probably never realized someone would sign up for all those different people, right? And so every day then for a week or so, because they were running a sale, all 8 of them would come in at the exact same moment. What does that mean? The exact same person sending out the same mass email for all 8 of them at one time, and all of them have their products made by the exact same company. And they're all just marketing branches of a same company. And that's why every single one of them has a different take on health, because they know there's all different types of people who think differently. And one of the doctors even pushes the fact that you should never drink water. He hasn't drank water in 20 years. You need to eat red meat 3 times a day, and you need to do all these things, right? Why? Because there's a small segment of the population that would believe that, and they'll just think, well, that's great, that's for me, right? And they buy all his stuff, right? It's just all marketing, and it's all rolls on by. Although I do get some good information out of their sites, but you realize how tied in even the natural health field is to marketing and advertising and stuff on the internet. But it's hard for people to actually not realize that and not to buy into something that has the name of a medical doctor on it. You know, just the reality that you're paying attention to basic needs in health, that you set your body up through magnetics and water and sleep to have a different reaction to the nutritional products that you are going to put in your system. Your body will react completely differently to jade greenzymes because you're drinking water and you're sleeping right and you have magnetic energy than it would with someone who's just doing nothing right in their whole life. They'll still benefit from it, but it won't be the supercharged thing that you'll feel because your body works differently. And you know, your body is really just energy, even though nobody talks about it. If you look at the science in quantum physics and how they really look at the body and how it signals and tells every single process in your body what to go on, it's not really chemicals. You know, chemicals is a little part of the signaling of all your cells, the chemicals you make out of your food and the vitamins and all these different things. But what they're missing is the fact that all your cells are composed of energy and they communicate through wavelengths and frequencies and energy. That's how your body actually talks to every single cell in your body. And when you can make that easier just by having some insoles in your shoes, that little added 5-10% of how everything communicates becomes a little easier, then everything in your body works a little easier. And isn't that the point of everything that you do? Your DNA, you know, we talk about DNA, we're always talking about genetics and how it's pre-programmed to do something. And the reality is that you might have a predisposition to get something. It never turns on if you don't smoke too much, drink too much, become overweight and don't exercise. And if you don't eat poorly, most of it will never, ever turn on. It's only in an absence of health do most genetics express themselves. So why go there? You have the opportunity, you can make the decision every single day to be healthier and to do things that are good for you. So why go to the point where you're just going to express something solely due to what you ate for the last 5 years? Because that's really what's going on. You know, genetics is really replaced by epigenetics, which means the signals that are sent to your cells that your DNA picks up determines what it's actually going to do. And you know where that your DNA really, instead of thinking all the time about DNA and genetics and stuff, your DNA is simply almost like a tuning fork. It's an antenna for picking up signals. And the signals that you give it are dependent on water, magnetic energy, your thought system, and the food that you eat. All these things determine and determine your amount of light and frequency you have in your body and the signals that your cells are actually going to get. You know that water, if you don't have enough water, it's hard for the molecules in your body to actually go into the patterns needed to actually move and signal energy and move it around your body because you don't have enough water. Now that may sound a little bit out there, but what's the first thing that happens when you're slightly dehydrated? You don't think clearly. You know, if you're having trouble thinking and you're frustrated, try drinking a large glass of water. Try drinking a large glass of water out of a waterfall and see how your brain changes in 5 or 10 minutes. Because you're now creating the medium by which signals just run around your system. You know, in every cell in your body, there's only one protein molecule for 10,000 molecules of water. So what do you think is important to your health at every single moment? Water. Living water that makes it into your cells. This is why people have radical changes in their health by drinking clean water, or why they fall asleep on a bed for a week and their entire system changes, because it supplied that basic connection that everyone has to have to create a baseline of health. And this again is why it's so easy for everybody in this room to make an impact in somebody's life, because you can offer them even something as simple as a little water bottle to carry around and have clean water. You know how profound that little product is for the entire world? There's 20 billion pounds of plastic that's thrown away in the ocean right today. You know what 20 billion pounds does to the ocean? It's causing genetic changes in every single species of life in that ocean. And where does it come from? People throwing bottles away. People throwing plastics away. The tabs on their beer 6-packs. All this stuff is ruining the planet. You have a simple little option of buying a water bottle and sharing that with people that could change the billions of pounds that are being thrown away every single year. And it's a very simple concept. You know, it's also one of the greatest sales tools they've ever actually come up with. Every single person in here should take their bottle to a restaurant if they go, empty, right? And ask the lady to bring some water to fill it up. Because then she has to fill it up, or you fill it up in front of her. And it gives her an opportunity to ask you what it is. And it gives you an opportunity to tell her what it is, or to tell him what it actually is. And so it's a learning tool. It's the easiest thing to show people that you're actually doing something, and to make a statement about what you're actually doing. It's one of the greatest sales tools that I think that nobody ever uses in Nikken, is to carry that thing around and let people see it. You know, and these things can have profound effects on people. The average person is buying water all the time and spending gobs of money on bottled water. And really it's just tap water for most people anyway. Why don't you just go to the tap and fill up your Nikken bottle with it, right? It's the same thing. And yet that little thing could be planting a seed in that person's mind about starting a different business, changing their life, moving on to some other activity. And it's a little snowball effect. Everything starts with a small idea and moves on to something else. And become as big as that person will allow it to become. You know, one of the things I love about coming to Seattle is that my favorite poet lives in Seattle. And people often ask me how I prepare for my talks, right? I don't study nutrition. I don't study Nikken products. I don't study anything. I read that stuff during the week just because it's my hobby. I actually read poetry before I come out and talk, because poetry opens my heart and it makes me feel light and alive. And my favorite poet, David White, actually lives here in the Seattle area. In fact, I ran into a doctor last night named Mark. Wasn't it Mark who introduced me? Yeah. And he actually knows where he lives, and he's been on his property. And so I think he snuck onto it. But the reality is that he has a great book out on just work, choosing the life that you want to have. And it's all about your work. And he had one of the most profound things that I've ever read about work. And I really thought about Nikken immediately when I saw that. And I actually wrote it down because there are some things I don't remember. And so I'm going to read it to you. And I want you to think about this, because Nikken offers this to you. And this is what he said. He says, you must learn one thing. The world was meant to be free in, Give up all other worlds except the one in which you belong. Think about that with your choice of work, and people complain about the work that they're in. They don't like their job. You've chosen to be there. Figure out the world that you belong in and choose it. You all have that opportunity. And you know what? It starts with getting healthy and making wise decisions and becoming alive and more vibrant and seeing the world in a different way. He had another comment on chronic fatigue which really resonated with me. And I know a lot of people suffer from this. And it's hard for people with chronic fatigue to look inward and see that maybe they played a huge role in that. I don't mind admitting that I caused my own chronic fatigue. I had it, and I caused the whole thing through stress and an inappropriate way of seeing the world. And so my big movement of getting out of it had to do with an experience of just stepping back from my stress and seeing life completely different for a few moments. And my whole life has changed since that moment. Has never been the same. And so it helped me to crawl out of that hole of chronic fatigue. But he wrote this amazing story about he had the same actual experience. And he had started out in life working as a marine biologist. Had lived in the Galapagos Islands for a long period of time, moved to Seattle, started a huge company around ecology and the environment, and was literally dying. He was so tired from all the stress of it, and he had realized he'd built this huge organization and he couldn't get out of it, right? And he realized that what he really loved from the time he was a kid was poetry. He loved reading poetry, he loved telling stories about poetry and writing poetry. And he became so fatigued he could hardly function. And one night, and this is what I also love about him, he always seems to end up sitting in a house drinking a glass of red wine with a monk from somewhere, right? I don't know how he knows so many monks and so many guys like this, but it's always what he always ends up doing, right? So he's sitting in this chair in front of the fireplace speaking to this monk. And the guy's going on reading some poetry from Germany, and he goes, and I'm sitting there and I'm just slinking in my chair and I'm getting lower and lower, and I finally interrupted him and said, "Father Mark," or something, "teach me about exhaustion," right? Because he was so exhausted he couldn't move. And he goes, "Well, you know, exhaustion's not, you can't help exhaustion by resting. Has nothing to do with it. Sleep and rest has nothing to do with exhaustion. It's a lack of wholeheartedness." That's what exhaustion is. And when I read that, I thought about my own life and how I wasn't really fully engaged in anything that I was doing at that time. And I wasn't doing anything that I truly loved. All my triathlon experience and all that exercise and people looked up to me for, I did it because it gave me some sense of self-worth, and it really had no substance to it at all. I had never spent the time to develop myself, and I had never thrown my heart into anything. And a lot of people move through life like that. They never find anything they truly resonate with that engages their heart and allows them to just move through the world with their own, basically their heart chakra open in their own identity. And so think about that in terms of what you're doing in life and what you want to get involved with, and how your entire system can change just due to having something you're passionate about and something you truly want to do. I've run out of time, and it's one of the very few times in my life I actually ended on time. You're welcome.
Thank you.
This tape may be purchased from Focus on Growth by calling 1-800-496-8508 or going to the web at www.focusongrowth.com.
The claims, opinions, and representations herein are solely those of the presenters. Focus on Growth makes no warranty, expressed or implied, as to the contents herein or the claims, opinions, and representations of the presenters.